You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. You know, many of us have children, and taking care of those children is very important. Like many of us, we talk about how it takes a village, and it takes a true village to raise children so they can be happy and healthy and be strong. And at the same time, when that happens and we actually take care of them properly, we're allowed to help them with change, to understand change, because change is one of the constants that we have in life. And we can help them to also embrace change and embrace adventure. Joining me live on Live Your True Life Perspectives, Jack Purser. Jack is the author of the new children's book, Saving Forest Farms. He's also a student, runs the Student Affairs Department at Mississippi State and has been at other universities as well. And so he understands the importance of being able to deal with change, adventure, and he has this new book out that we're going to talk about today. Jack, it's so great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Doing great, and thank you for having me on your program.
You know, I love your new book, Saving Forest Farms. Really amazing, and I like the fact that you're working with children and helping them, welcome change, since change is one of the constants, is really the only constant that we have in this life, and also braving and really, helping them understand and embrace those new adventures. Share with me how and why were you inspired, and what inspired you to write this latest book of yours?
Yes. Well, what really inspired me, it goes all the way back to about 14, almost 15 years ago. I started my adventure of coming to college and being away from home for the very first time. And not just being away from home, but being a great distance from home, going to college. And it was a big change. I was excited about it. And I know I was on a new adventure, but, there's a lot of unknowns. I'd never been in that experience before. And got to say, it was a tough transition. A lot of things started going on back home when I wasn't there. Some family members were having some health issues. My parents' relationship was falling apart. I was having trouble adjusting. I was getting sick physically, and I just wanted to focus on all the things that I wanted to still do and get out of this experience, even though it was still early on. And I had a class project for my writing intro to media technology classes, and our project was to write a radio program, serial type show. They used to do a lot back in the 40s and 50s, and the podcasts are kind of doing those now. And I was just started really examining what exactly do I want to go with, and all the things that were going on kept going through my head. And it's like, I don't want this to be a sad story or a sad project that I put together. Even though I was going through those different things in my life, I wanted it to show there are struggles. There are differences and new things happening all the time, but at the end, we still have a accomplishment or an outcome that we want to face at the end that we want to achieve. So I'm a big Disney fan or cartoon fan, and just these animal creatures kept popping in my head as I kept thinking about this, and they kept resonating with me. So a goat, a fox, a goose, a rat, they just kept popping in my head, and so I finally felt, okay, I know what direction I want to go in, and I just focused on having talk about, being a part of the community. I was in a new community. I have a family community back home, and we might be going through an emotional drought or other challenges that we feel drained. But at the end, we still want that rain, and that rain can still come. So that's the basis that I wanted to get out of it. And it all started coming together. I enjoyed doing the project, and I had actors act out, like the voice actors in my class, to the different characters. Really liked it. I recorded it. I even showed my wife. Well, wasn't my wife at the time. Or let her listen to the videotape. Not the videotape, the cassette tape, because we still use cassette tapes even that time ago. It was just phasing out completely at that time. And but I listened to it, and she really liked it. So that would be a really good children's story. And actually had a friend back home who was a kindergarten teacher. Actually played the cassette tape to the children, and they really liked it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. But as the years go by, kind of put it on the shelf. Didn't really do anything with it. And I was going through another change in my life. We downgraded our living situation. We went tiny 3 years ago, and we got rid of a lot of possessions, and I know a lot of things that were important to us, me and my wife and my kids. And we learned we were going through a tough time, like getting rid of all these things. And here I was going through all these belongings I had, and I ran across this tape, and I was like, wow, we're downsizing. That's a new challenge for us. Our youngest child, our youngest son, he was going through some medical situations where he had a few surgeries, and like, going through that emotionally and going through the change of our living situation and medical bills and things like that. And I got the tape back. I had to order a tape recorder or tape player off on Amazon and listen to it again because we don't really have that stuff anymore. And I've lost the script and everything like that. So I started listening to it again, and it's like, okay, this resonated with me back then. Now it's resonating with me once again. It's still applicable to my situation, and it inspired me all over again. And it even motivated me enough to actually start transcribing it all and writing it all down the way I did it back 14 years ago, and started moving things around into another story, developed some more of the characters that I didn't have originally into the storyline, and changed some names to fit more about what their personality was. So it just had a great feeling about it. And I was like, I have 3 children now, and I want to show them something that it really helped me out, and I hope that they can enjoy it too. And started the process of looking through different publishing opportunities, and it all started coming together. Everything was aligning up, and the vision that I had in my head, the illustrator I worked with got it almost perfect.
That's cool. It's awesome. It's a great story. A lot of us do have these things that we've created, these projects, these, in your case, a children's book, and we put it on the shelf and we don't do anything with it. And then one day there comes a time when we kind of, fall upon it again, and then we make the decision, do we do it? Do we not do it? I found that when people don't, there's quite a bit of regret. So that's good that you've done it. Does it feel invigorating? Does it feel like, some sort of, you've kind of passed this test, or you've gone to that next level of life because you actually followed through with this and created something and, brought it to fruition?
Yes, it definitely. I feel really invigorated. And as I was doing it back, writing it down, I just felt this amazing energy coming from it. And every time I've experienced that type of energy in my life, great things have happened. It seems like, okay, I knew this was a possibility. I knew that this was something that I could accomplish, but I feel that energy that it's actually going to happen. And I like to ride that. I think that's something that we let circumstances and a lot of situations take that away from us. And those situations didn't take it away from us. We allowed it to. And so that was, it was a weight off my shoulders when I actually got to get this thing done. And I have so many other story ideas that I've always wanted to do. And by doing this and seeing what has come about from getting this published and out there and sharing my story, only enables me to share even more and be more creative, and go back to the creative side that I was when I was much younger.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, it's great that you've created this, you've created these characters, and all these characters are animals. And, when you were thinking about this, what was some of the ideas that came to you? Why did you pick these particular animals to be to be the characters in the book?
Yeah. Well, I really like a lot of the farm animals growing up. I had a farm set. I had all these different animals. I didn't necessarily have lived on a physical farm or anything like that, but I always was fascinated with pigs and goats and geese and horses. And a few times I've got to ride a horse and things like this. I just really loved that farm feeling as a kid. It was fascinating, and how the farm setting is genuine and it's more authentic and it is humbling in a sense. And then when I threw in maybe some forest animals like the fox, necessarily isn't a farm animal, but they come around farms, they're present. And I always, looking at the fox, I always saw beauty in the fox, and I always saw more of like a strong spirit, a hero and courage, because they go in to get into things sometimes, and they're brave and they stand out.
I like that. When we return, we'll be talking more about the different characters in the book, the story itself, and also the direction of talking with Jack about being a father and how he integrates this with his own children. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's episode of Perspectives, we're talking with Jack Purser. Jack is the writer of Saving Forest Farm. He just wrote this book, just published it, and it has some really neat meaning because it goes back to helping children, dealing with change, dealing with adventure, and overcoming that fear. I think that we as adults and we as children have fear of change. You know, Jack, I was going to ask you, being that you are a parent and you have 3 children, right?
Yes.
How do you see change impacting your own children?
I see it impact them very similar to how I was impacted, and that's something that I, by having kids, have to check myself and reflect on. Like, I have come through some experiences myself, and I tend to forget of how it was to be a kid. So by having them, I have to remind myself of how to embrace and go through the different changes that they may be going through and reflect back. And like, for example, my oldest is in 1st grade, and my youngest, my daughter is in kindergarten. So just how going to school and what they need to prepare for, and what some nerves they have to go into, and people they meet, how nervous they would be. I have to go back and think about how I had those experiences so I can share it with them, or I can go and talk to them about it, and that'd be okay, because they have to deal with a lot of emotions of excitement, of nervousness, and that feeling like they've never been in a situation before, so that the unknown kind of sits there.
Yeah, the unknown is the fear factor for many of us. You know, I think that's like anything when we're taking that deep dive into life, the unknown of will things work out? What about this change? Will this change? What kind of change is this going to be? Will this cause a great change in my life, and how severe will it be? You know, as a therapist, change is something that a lot of people just try to avoid. And the fact is that change scares us, and as a child too, I think a lot of times too as children, because we're not really in charge and the change is kind of coming at us, and because we don't realize kind of the thought of change, but we don't also realize our own personal power, we can feel almost overwhelmed by that change and not even know kind of the direction we need to go, and not seeing that internal power that we have, to basically weather the storm.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting when we observe our experiences too. So being a father, and now you're a children's author, which is great. I think that's great. Why do you feel, when we're thinking about children, and what do you think is the necessity? Because like I was talking about at the beginning of the show, why it's so important that it takes a village. Do you feel that that's correct? And if so, how do you think that, people that don't have children, but they're around other people's children, how can they, get connected and help these children to feel safe and calm in an ever-changing environment?
I would say they once again have to put in their self in the situation that they were kids at one point in their lives, and remembering back of how difficult some things were, or how they could and couldn't process certain things, where you have those overwhelming feelings that you mentioned earlier. Just being able to allow them to feel like themselves, like be themselves, because the surroundings are always going to change. There's going to be struggles coming here and there. There's always going to be change. But the thing that you can give anybody advice and just stay true to yourself. Stay true to your values, because that is the one constant that you are. You just move through things, and you don't let those things become you. Stand head above water in a sense. And just allow them to feel excited about the future, embrace it, and be patient. When you're interacting with children, or one day you're going to be a parent, just know that not every day is going to be easy. Some days you're going to feel like I really don't think I'm cut out for this, but it's okay. Our experience is a great teachers about who we are and where we need to go and how we become better.
Let me ask you, I know that you said that your son was going through some surgeries and going through some health situations. Hopefully he's doing well. How did you work with him to understand the situation and how to calm him throughout the situation that he probably didn't really truly understand?
Yeah. With my youngest, he was very small, so he wasn't at the point where he was understanding of what was going on anyway.
Oh, okay.
But the thing about it is that we talked to him like he would understand. We didn't want to surprise him in a sense when we go see doctors and things of that nature. But we do sit down, and it was more about talking to his siblings than it was really him. And we had to tell them, okay, he's going to have this surgery. We have to do these certain things, treat him or take care of him. He can't be held this way, or he can't do a lot of movement because of having surgery. So just helping them process the emotions, seeing their little brother go and have these operations and him come back, and how is he going to be? Is he going to be all right? So I actually had just, we sat down and talked to him to let him know what was going on. We didn't, say anything. We didn't want to say these terminologies, medical terminology. We were very simple with it, and just heard what they had to say about it and talked to them through it.
I think that it can be done with any children, and I think that that's great that you did that at the age of your child, no matter how young, because, the things in our formative years, so, everybody that's listening to the show, the things that happened to you when you were a very young child have made an imprint on your life. And so if you have encouraging parents, many of us did, some of you didn't, unfortunately, and some folks that are listening right now might have been more on the abusive scale with the family dynamic. So that's very unfortunate, because these events in our early age really shape who we are. And so I really find that commendable that you actually took the time, Jack, to actually explain, especially to the siblings, but also to the kiddo that's going through it, because just that calming effect of feeling calm and not being thrown into the situation, to some degree, subconsciously, the child knew and could understand based on you being calm and explaining the situation. And I think there's something to learn from that.
Thank you.
Very powerful. So y'all are going through a lot of changes in the family dynamic, and this show's all about perspective, and I think that we fear and resist that change, or we can embrace it, and knowing that we can also help and grow in our development. So how can we as parents, begin to take a closer look at our own attitudes and our own behaviors toward the unknown?
I would say that we got to make sure we pay more attention to our energies and our emotions, because children have a stronger sense of picking up our emotions or our stress, our anger levels, more so than we think they do. That's something we always, I guess, forgot when we got older, because we learned how to manage it a little bit better, and how sometimes we, as kids, would react. Either we hurt somebody or hit somebody or laughed uncontrollably or went into something that might have been out of character, by getting in a fight at school, or purposely not doing your homework. Just sometime acting out. Just allowing that opportunity to talk to your children and understand that whatever energy we're giving off, we had a bad day at work or we had a bad day at school, or somebody our family had another family member going through something, either mentally or physically, health-wise, and it's a lot of pressure on us. Let our children know that we're having a hard time, but also at the same time, we're leading by example of these unknowns. And if we're showing them we're not doing a very good job controlling ourselves and where we want to outlook on our future and our current situation, they're more likely not to have any good strength, capabilities, or coping mechanisms in place for them to go through it. So they'll be going through the same channel. It kind of does the same cycle. So behaviors toward the unknown is just talk about it. Don't let the things that you don't understand or you can't control dictate how you look at it, basically. Be excited about it. This is going to be tough. These situations are going to be really tough sometimes. And these experiences are going to feel like we're never going to get through them. But in the end, you will get through them. There's a purpose why we go through them. We can look at other people's lives and people that had hardships and whatever, either abusive relationships or didn't have as much privilege as someone else. Look at how they survived it. Use those examples. Keep pointing at people in a direction. Keep educating. The more you educate yourself and look at things from different perspectives, that unknown gets so much more clear. And you get to that point where you go into it and you basically just dominate it. You accomplish it and destroy it. All that fear and things like that just kind of go away. They vanquish. And the thing is, and we always sometimes forget, fear is what we create. The situation doesn't create fear. We created it in our mind and how we respond to it.
And that's so true. The way we respond to it and how we think about something directly reflects on how we deal with it. We can look at it one way and take care of it, or we can look at it the other way and be fearful and be overwhelmed. When we return, we'll be talking more about overcoming change, dealing with change, overcoming fear of change, and talking more about the book as well. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. We'll be back this time, 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about change. We've been talking about the fear of change, but the fear of the unknown. Joining me here on Live Your True Life Perspectives, Jack Purser. Jack is the writer and creator of Saving Forest Farms, a new book out. It's really helping out kids, and it's also helping out parents to deal with that fear and the fear of change. Right before the break, Jack, you had made a comment about how, it's about how we look at it. We put the spin on change. We put the spin on experiences. And those experiences, we can either see an experience as being good or we can see an experience being bad. We have a tendency of coloring things, and we have a tendency of not really seeing the gray. But a lot of times, just the way we see something directly relates to how it feels. So what is something that you think would be a good tactic to teach your kids, and I'm sure this is in the book, and it is in the book, is how do you look at things without defining it as good or bad, hard or easy? How do you look at that and take it on?
Well, you look at it with faith in getting through it, faith in getting results, a good result. So whatever that you want the outcome to be, usually the outcome is good. Everybody's striving to be good. Just our methods to get there have been shaky, and become the term we have is bad. Nobody really expects and wants a bad outcome. And sometimes we get blinded by how we want that good outcome, that we do bad things, and bad things happen to other people along the way. So my tactic would be is just, hey, when we're going through this process, know that we're a part of a larger community or smaller community, but there's more of us trying to get to the same place. We might be different, but we all desire the same thing. And so talk to one another. Share your ideas, because if somebody's idea, if they really don't believe it, that's okay. That's okay if they don't believe it. But at the same time, if you believe in something so strongly, go for it. see where you go, because that's what experience is all about. It's going through the situation to see, okay, did I meet what I wanted to meet? Did I accomplish the goal? Did I get the outcome I desired? So the tactic would be just don't give up, have that faith in getting there. And if you keep working at it, you will get there. The end result is there. And sometimes the solution to you, or when you go into this adventure or this journey, when the solution reveals itself or somebody tells you, this is what I see is going to happen, embrace it. If it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to be, and if somebody told you something different, if it's there, and when you start to process it and it can still accomplish the goal and it's still good, go for it. Be open-minded to different solutions and different ideas. And that's what I really tried to hit on in the book. Conventional wisdom sometimes tells you one thing, but something else that maybe has never been done before might be really tugging at you, and you might be the one to actually go and do it. And it has to be a good balance in between that too. Conventional wisdom is a good resource. Tradition can be a good resource, but at the same time, when you've exhausted that experience and that doesn't seem to work anymore, it's okay to explore other avenues.
Let me ask you, if you have a child that comes to you and is fearful about change, or is basically, telling you that they're stressed out or they're scared, what are 3 ways that you can help that child to navigate through their fears and that resistance, and to pretty much learn to fully embrace change and to also see that change as a venture?
Yeah. Remain calm. A calm demeanor is always welcome to everybody that you encounter, whether it be adults or children. And when they're coming to you with those concerns about something that's going on in their life, something's changed, or they're scared about something, listen empathetically to them. Make sure they feel like they're being heard. That way they can connect to you and really start taking what you have to say serious. Second, once they feel comfortable and they are talking to you, make sure that when you talk back to them that you're speaking very genuine and authentic, that you are hearing what they're saying. And when you're talking to them, don't talk over them, talk directly to them. If you talk over them, it seems like, hey, he's not really listening to me. He or she has already made up their mind about how this is going to work, and they don't feel any better off than they did before they came to you, and they probably won't come to you that often anymore. Lastly, I would say allow them to make the decision or try to incorporate smaller changes over time. Sometimes you don't feel comfortable enough to make a big change because you have more resistance when you try to just like, I am going to do a 180. That can be really tough on folks, especially children, when their life has been one way for so long, and this is how they see the world. So smaller changes will help them adjust and be more accustomed to larger changes in the future, and they'll be more open to different ideas going forward.
That's nice. Because there's like the big issues, we unfortunately some marriages don't last. And so having that separation, you have also changes in school where you have to move to a different place altogether and have to make all new friends, moving out of an area where you've known folks, living arrangement changes. And I do agree with you. If you start being able to open this communication early on, then when it comes to really critical issues that you're dealing with your teenager and perhaps older, they're going to come to you and actually have that conversation with you. In the things that when they get in the thick of it, they're actually going to feel comfortable to have that conversation.
Right.
I was going to ask you, what are the key messages, in the book? What are the key messages that you wish for children and parents and families to take away from reading, Saving Forest Farms?
I have quite a few. I use a lot of different themes throughout the book, but overall is that life is a big journey. Sometimes where we are settled in at our home life, and the farm was representative of that in the book. You have to go out and explore before you can actually see the end result. Sometimes it's just never going to come to you. You have to go to it to see the change that you want to make. And also trust in yourself, trust in the people around you. Allow them to help you go forward. And if there's ever any resistance, fight it. But also at the same time, try to understand what that resistance is. If you never try to understand the resistance, you can never overcome it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the more we resist something, the more it persists. So, then again, we have another situation, and I find that very powerful. I was going to ask you, in the book, all the different characters, Farrell the fox, Gunther the goat. I actually have a friend named Gunther, which is funny. And the rest of the, and he looks like a Gunther, you know what I'm saying? Like, totally looks like a Gunther.
Yeah.
Are there any stories or, are they going to have some adventures coming up in the future? Are there going to be like a sequel to this book? What's on the horizon, you think, Jack?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how I'm going to go forward with the storyline. My plan is to have a sequel to Saving Forest Farm, more of a reunion, because everybody kind of goes out and does their own thing with what their strengths are and what their passions are. Whether that be a model, whether that be a field goal kicker, whether that be a historian or a caregiver. And before I get to that reunion sequel to the book, I was going to write a book about each character. So Farrell Fox will have his own story, Gunther Goat, Raffy Rat, Pastor Pig, and so on. So the readers can understand exactly where these characters came from, how they think, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and how they all play and fit in together. And then when I have the reunion book come out, it'll make more sense. See how they all play together and make everything work as a unit, as a community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's always great when especially a book like this where you can really connect with the character and you can feel the character. And I think also animals really help because it allows us to kind of see ourselves in all the different animals instead of being kind of typecast to what we think we look like, as a kid, or even as an adult.
Yes.
So that's really neat. I think that's really powerful. How do folks find you? If they're looking for you on the web, how can someone find you? How can someone find your book?
Yeah. It's very easy to find me. You can find me at www.jackpurser.com. I'm also on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. At Facebook, I'm at Boone Purser and at Saving Forest Farm. That's for Facebook and Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at Jack_Purser. You can actually Google Saving Forest Farm. You can find it just about anywhere in the world now. It's hitting sites like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, on my website actually as well. So it's easy to find Saving Forest Farm if you're really trying to look for it online.
Nice. And Jack, one lasting thought for us, for our listeners, because I think you're a wealth of knowledge, and I definitely want to have you come back on if you want to come back on the show. One thought, though, for our listeners about, if they're dealing with their kids, what is one thing that's simple that we might not realize that we should be doing on a daily basis?
I would say reflection. Have a time where you can really reflect on who you are and where you're going and where you are at the moment. Pay a special attention to where you are at the moment. So more of a reflection. Maybe some people like to say it's more meditative, but just on that time where you're more mindful about where you are and where you're going to go.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jack, so much for being on the show. I look forward to having you back on because I'll have you back on when you write the sequel for sure. Hope you'll want to come back on. And I can't wait to hear more of your adventures.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
When I return, I'll be talking more about dealing with change, dealing with the fear of change, and how we can do it. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. What a great show. We've been talking about dealing with change, the fear of change, and new adventures. Jack Purser was on the show. Jack is the creator and writer of Saving Forest Farms. I don't always believe that children's books are children's books. I think they're more than that, right? And I thought it was interesting when he was talking about, when I was asking him about the child and, going through the medical stuff and having to overcome that, and then them actually talking and communicating with the child. And he said the child was very young. I think that's very powerful. And I think that it's something that is commendable. And I think that we need to look at having those conversations with all of our family members, no matter how young, having the conversation, opening the dialogue, discussing these things and having some clarity and understanding. I think this is very powerful. I think it's really powerful to talk to everybody in the family, no matter how old they are, to really have that communication. Because I remember, going through my childhood, being born with a condition that nobody understood, having no diagnosis, not understanding, and going through so many treatments and surgeries and going through that, and how traumatic that is. I mean, it's traumatic. And when you don't understand what's happening, that's even more traumatic. We don't realize the impact that these things have on us at a very young age. And we don't realize the impact that it'll have on us for the rest of our life unless we, in certain cases, seek therapy and treatment and what have you. But one of the things that I find that was interesting with our conversation with Jack was the concept of change and how we see things and how we see issues. Do we see them as a problem, or do we see them as something that we can overcome? Do we have the empowerment within ourselves and faith, or do we kind of freak out? And I think that it's easy to do the latter, because sometimes we can get overwhelmed. We get confused. But one of the things, too, is we don't feel like we have the tools to deal with it. We don't feel like we have the tools to overcome it. We feel overwhelmed. We feel scared. We feel stressed out. And especially as a child, not really having those coping skills and not having those self-soothing skills that we are supposed to have as adults, that can be really traumatic because we don't know where to put that energy at. And I think that was really interesting because it is about the energy. And one of the other things that I thought was interesting about what Jack was talking about was when I asked him about, when a child comes to you and has fears and tells you about that, how do you help them embrace the change? And how do you help them see the adventure of life? And I love what he said about speaking honestly and authentically from the heart. I think that's a big one. It's like we're not talking over them. We're not talking under them. We're actually seeing them as human beings that have feelings. And we're actually letting them know that we care. Okay? We're letting them know that we care. But we're also letting them know that we hear them. That we're listening to them, that their opinions and thoughts matter. And I know that many of you listening, you went through a childhood that wasn't like that, and you felt misunderstood, you felt unheard, you felt basically neglected, okay? And coming from that position as a child and going into the adulthood, the one thing you want to be is heard. You want to be understood. You want to be in the middle of things. You want people to hear you. And so if you're in that situation right now, I want you to begin to work with your inner child. I want you to communicate with your inner child. And that's something that I work with clients as we really get in there, because you need to communicate with that inner child, because there was a time when that inner child didn't get the affection or the information or anything that the child needed. And I find that Jack sounds like a really good dad, right? And someone that listens to his children and cares about what his kids think and cares about how they feel. And that to me is extremely powerful. And I think that many of us might have wanted a childhood like that. I think some of you might have had a childhood like that or similar to that, and that's very powerful too, and that's really great. However, even if we didn't have that childhood, it's going back and doing that if we have children for our kids and being that change in the cycle and saying, you know what, I'm not going to sit there and judge. I'm not going to judge what maybe my parents did, or I'm not going to, maybe there is fault, but I'm going to, instead of judging and just kind of wallowing that, I'm going to make the changes that I need to make the best life for my children. And it's not about the money. And it's not about the great clothes or the shoes or whatever. It's about listening and being there and actually having that communication and being a family, no matter what. That's the most important, and that's what empowers people, and that's what gives us that call. That's what connects us. That's that je ne sais quoi that kids need to be able to be successful in this world. And so I think it's interesting, the various characters. I mean, Pharaoh the fox, Gunther the goat, it's so neat. I can't wait to hear what they do next, you know what I'm saying? And I like how the book is around animals. Because, we can all connect with animals and we don't lose sight of the story and the message, right? Because sometimes we can lose sight because we try to compare ourselves. And, as kids and even as adults, we're always trying to fit in, trying to get in where we fit in, that kind of sort of thing. And so sometimes getting in, we see the things that are different from us instead of the things that are similar. And I feel it's powerful that we actually communicate with our children. I think it's powerful that we actually use our past and our thoughts of the things that we had to deal with and the struggles we had to understand and anticipate the struggles that they will too have. And to be participants in a positive way to make changes to their life. And to participate in a positive way to give them the answers and give them the knowledge that they deserve so that they can actually process and understand the situation and circumstances to the best of their ability. And allow them to understand the choices that are made. And for you listening right now to the show, I want you to analyze, what changes are you going through in your life and how are you coloring those changes? Are you looking at them with kind of interest and kind of dispelling the negativity? Because I found in my own personal life that when I think about something and I feel like it's overwhelming or scary, or I don't feel like I have the answers, I can get very fearful and I feel as though I'm actually not participating anymore. And one of the ways that I've realized that we have to take on change is we have to basically accept it and to say, hey, I might not have all the answers, but it will come clear at some point. As long as I'm doing the right thing and I'm being mindful and I'm in the moment and I'm taking time to figure out the situation, the answers will come. And also I've realized, too, that when I look at something under duress, I'm not going to have the answers necessary. But I know that if I step back and see the change and know that things have to change, and then I step back a little bit and allow myself the time to breathe and to accept this, all of a sudden I'm able to see the light at the end of the tunnel and able to see options that I couldn't see before. Taking some time to act, not acting immediately, but taking some time, thinking about it, looking at it from various different angles, even sleeping on it for a bit, and taking a break and coming back and saying, okay, I can tackle this. And one of the other things, too, is it's all in our mindset. When we look at things, are we looking at things from one angle or another? How are we looking at it, and how are we coloring the change? Because I figured out that, just like Jack was talking about, and myself, it's the way we look at it. If we look at change as a new embarking and a new adventure, it can be very powerful. But if we look at it as something negative and horrible, we end up finding ourselves down a rabbit hole where we feel overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, and we feel like we don't have the answers. So the next time that you have change embarking in your life, accept it with open arms as much as possible, and try not to expect things to be, because we have to take expectations out. Expectations are overrated because we can expect something to be one way and it's the exact opposite, or it's something that we never dreamed it could be. Allowing the unknown to happen, and surely having some faith. I hope this show has helped, and please share it with your friends and family, because, it's all about that, and it's about a village. It takes a village to raise children, and it takes a village in this society today to help other people, to feel good, for them to help you, and to have that amazing cycle of love and support. If you haven't already, check out my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, put in Ashley Burgess, Ashley, Berges. Ashley Burgess. You can see my new YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel. I have new video content every week that can help you to make changes in your life, to overcome toxic relationships, understand cycles, understand narcissism, understand what a good marriage is, and the list goes on. Also, don't forget to check out ashleyburgess.com, where you can find all past shows after it's run on the radio and the syndication, and you can also find all the podcasts there housed as well. And so just go to Ashley, Berges.com. I'm so happy that Jack was on the show. Look forward to having him back on. And Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.